Hello, Lynn. How's it going? Welcome. Oh, right on. Well, I appreciate that. Appreciate the long time fandom. And glad that you could jump on the stream. That's awesome. I'm hoping, not hoping, I'll be able to get to some painting tonight. I think I want to redo. Now, I already redid their positioning. I just want to clean up the, I don't know, I guess line work technically, though it's not necessarily about the line work as much as it is just figuring out some details that I don't know. I could do in the painting, but we'll see. Honestly, I kind of want a clean line drawing that I can then print out and transfer. So, and hello Johnny, and hello Kai. Thanks for joining. Ultimately, I'm doing this, for anyone that doesn't know, I am doing this as a study to do an oil painting from, you know, since I don't have actual reference of, you know, a bunch of seafaring elves hanging out at a dockside tavern. I have to create my own reference. So, that's what this is about. And I'll probably get a bit more into their expressions too. Right now they're kind of blank-faced, and I think I want a bit more of an expression. I'm just not sure what yet. Kind of depends on the story behind the scene. And I'm not sure what that is. Yet. But we'll get there. The other thing I'm not sure about, originally I was going to have a daytime scene, but I don't know. It makes more sense to me that maybe it would be a nighttime scene, just because, like, I mean, unless they're on some kind of, like, shore leave, right? I feel like a seafaring culture would maybe be docked at night, and you know, that's when they could hang out at taverns. By the way, let me know if the sound is okay, please. If the music is too loud, or Not loud enough. And my idea with this is to treat it a bit more as a vignette. So even though this is the ratio of, this is like a 16 by 20 inch, right, is the canvas that it will go on. But I'm not actually going to paint out to the edges. But I will deal with that more in the painting side and not as much in the drawing side. Let's see, currently, so 2 questions there. Oftentimes I work out the details of the story as that's kind of part of what the visual side is for me, is to help me sort of work out some of the details, to help kind of visualize a scene. Sometimes though, I have something, very clear in mind. So it just kind of varies. It sort of depends on how strong the inspiration is that pops in. And currently, in terms of the brush, I'm using Lane's charcoal master pack. Lane draws. I'm sure people have probably seen him on like Instagram and stuff. I know you can get his charcoal pack on Gumroad, and I'm pretty sure he also just released a pastel pack, which I have not tried yet. But the charcoal pack is great. He did an awesome job, really, and he based kind of each brush, or a lot of the brushes, on old masters. And, he really took the time to kind of study the marks that they made and the types of tools that they used, and did his best to kind of replicate some of that. So they're pretty rad. I like them a lot, especially for sketching and stuff. Good stuff. So Gil Elfgren is, one of my favorite artists, especially when it comes to the pinup stuff. He's pretty rad. So this is my favorite of the charcoal brushes that he's made, but I think other people like other brushes. I like anything that gives me a good variety of marks, so if I just scale this up, you can see like I can get a nice broad mark that way, or if I pull the brush, the pencil, right, I can get a nice thin mark. So I like brushes that have that. I like flat brushes, even when I'm painting, unless I'm doing watercolor, and then I like rounds. But when I'm doing oils, I do most of my stuff with flats of some kind, either brights or long flats. I like filberts as well, because they can still get a nice amount of calligraphy in them. I have this plant here. I don't know if it makes sense. Like, why would you have a plant right at the window of a tavern, right? Because they're outside. It's like a walk-up window, which they used to have back in the day, though usually they were a bit smaller. They were like just big enough to pass drinks through, but I'm taking some liberties and going with the larger one. Hello! I can't read your name. Sorry. But hello and welcome. So I think, yeah, I feel like it doesn't really make sense to have the plant right there. I still want to plant, but we're just gonna shove it over to the side. Brush my own here. No, that's fine. So rather than having it too far under the window, we'll just have it cut in from the side and do it that way. And again, this is just rough stuff. A lot of this, the environment area, like I don't need to completely work out the environment to start painting it up, right? Simply because I feel like the environment part, a lot of that is going to come from texture anyway, which I'm not going to take the time to sit there and render that in the drawing, you know? Like, texture and stuff is just better done with the paint, so that's what we're going to do. But like I said, I do want to kind of detail them out a bit more, I think, in the drawing. I mean, I don't know. I'm so torn on that. I don't know if I really need to. But I feel like it would help. We're going to do it. We're going to detail them out a bit more. Just because I think it'll make the painting go easier, and because I can use some of that detail in the drawing as accents in the paint. So I do feel like it's worth taking the time. But for this, I will do a different. Entirely sure which one I want to draw with. Maybe this one. I think that'll give us some decent shapes. Alright, let's get in here. We don't need this so light. I mean, so dark. Alright. Alright. I went through a lot of back and forth on the last stream, which, wow, that was like a week ago, because I wasn't able to stream on Thursday because we were like building my computer and having some issues with it. Though got the issues figured out. I'm not on my new machine just yet, but I hopefully will be soon. There's just been a lot of shit to transfer over, and transferring from a Mac to a PC is not super easy. Like transferring terabytes of data, so it takes some time, but we'll get there soon. Really should think about Expressions. I kind of want them like smiling, but not like super happy. More like there's some shit going down and they're getting a kick out of it. You know, like not in the nicest way. Like someone's getting you know, in a fight or something and they find it amusing. Because I feel like while they may have some sophistication, my idea is that they're in a more human dominated environment and they don't particularly love the humans. So if they see a couple of them getting in a big fight, they think it's funny. And I feel like they're also a little bit rough and tumble because, you know, sailing, I don't care how sophisticated you are, not an easy life. At all. So, if that's the case, we have to take expressions into account here, right? And they are kind of like this particular culture, visually at least, is based a bit on Middle Eastern cultures, kind of doing a little bit of mashup. Thus the kind of Egyptian style eye makeup, which just looks cool. And this sort of turban style wrap. Though it's not really a turban, but kind of. Good, then we're on the same page. It's always a good challenge, I think, also, like, with, if you're gonna depict a smile, a lot of people tend to rely heavily on the mouth, but they overcompensate with it, and they'll do this really kind of exaggerated sort of smile that just ends up looking a bit forced. There's a lot more happening in the face than just the mouth, and if you can convey a smile before you ever even draw or paint the mouth, then you're in much better shape. So there's a lot of subtle stuff that's happening around the eyes and around the cheeks, right? Right, getting that apple of the cheek, conveying that will often get you there quicker than just relying on whatever the mouth is doing. especially because, if you're, say, depicting someone with facial hair, now his is well maintained, but if you had someone that had a big bushy beard or something, you got to be able to, you might still want to show them smiling, but maybe you can't even see their mouth, right? So expressions are a bit tricky, and we think of the smile as being the mouth, but we've all kind of like read descriptions and stuff of like someone that has a smile that doesn't touch their eyes, so it's like a fake smile or just a fucking psychopathic creepy smile. And so that kind of reminds us that it's not just in the mouth, and in fact the cues are more in other features, right? So it can help to kind of look at yourself in the mirror sometimes, I think. And, do expressions where you cover your mouth and study that and see kind of what changes and what sorts of aspects you might be able to latch onto, It helps. One of the reasons I also thought it might be fun to make this at night rather than in the day is because the opportunity for like this cool light outside and then warm light, streaming out from this window. And I think it'll just make for a more striking kind of lighting scenario. And I love to play with lighting. So I figured, why not? And if anybody has questions along the way about anything, please feel free to shout out. I had kind of designed a couple of these guys quite a while back, and they have these sort of like, some of them wear these kind of like almost ear caps, I guess. I don't really know what else to call them. Just, additional jewelry, basically. How's everybody's Monday going? If it's Monday where you are. I don't know what time zones everybody's in. But, it's Monday here in Los Angeles. I want these to have a sense, by the way, that they're like wrapped in particular ways, right? Because most of the cultures that do wear some kind of a head wrap tend to have ways of doing it for different reasons, you know. So I want them to have kind of very particular way, directions and stuff like that. Who knows if I'll get into detail with it, you know, in a story, but I can at least mention it. You know, I don't have to necessarily detail out exactly what it is, but I might at some point. Ooh. Yikes. What happened to his hand? And I hope it all went well. It's like, you know, always the artist's nightmare is something happening with our hands. Liked anesthesia that had that kind of effect, personally. Hello, Mateo. Oh, yikes. Yeah, that's not good. I mean, I hope in the long run it is a good thing, you know, that it's like a helpful surgery. So I don't want to get too into the shading necessarily, but I don't mind getting some in there. Because at a certain point I'll probably end up lightening some lines up along the way. I am not a teacher. I work full-time. Mostly working on movie posters. I have taught in the past, but it's been a while. And I didn't teach for long because it's kind of like... I did it more because, you know, it's like, it is fun to do, and I enjoy like passing on a bit of knowledge where I can. But it honestly just interfered a little too much with work. And, you know, at the time especially, I had a lot of student loans to pay off. And so I kind of needed as much work as I could get. So I had to bail on the teaching gig. Plus that commute sucked. I know a few people recently have actually asked about, you know, teaching and whether I would do a mentorship and stuff, but honestly, I don't have the time, you know, and it's not that I wouldn't want to. I think it would be fun to do that, but, you know, to do it right, it really does take... It takes time, and I have a little too much going on currently to be able to spare that kind of time, unfortunately. But, you know, the nice thing with the live stream is that people can always ask questions, and, you know, I can do my best to answer. I don't have all the answers, but I might have some. Whether it's artistic questions or life questions or, you know, how to make good cocktails, I don't know. Some of the marks that I'm making are more in anticipation of kind of what I'll end up doing when I start painting. So I'm not like some I use to describe form in a certain way, but I'm not concerned with keeping that super consistent, because this is not about a line drawing. Sometimes there are things where I know it'll be much easier to describe it when I'm actually working with form, right? Painting. And so I just need a placeholder there as a reminder. And then other things are easier to depict with the lines. And so I'll, you know, go a little more in depth that way. if I was doing this purely as a line drawing, I would keep things more consistent in the mark making. And one thing that I haven't quite figured out, which I know I mentioned last time, is so they also have a certain like amount of rank or station that's shown with these sashes that they wear over their shoulder. And I'm not sure if that will be in a pattern that's on it or in these kind of large, I guess you could call them beads. It's kind of what I'm thinking, that maybe it's shown in those potentially. Like either the pattern or the number of beads or the type of beads. I'm not sure. Or it might just be the particular one that's kind of worn in the front. Maybe shows something. And I could have, I don't know yet. I will figure it out, I think. Who knows? And they'll also have like tattoos and stuff, since I don't know why in so many sailing cultures tattoos were like a big deal. And I'm not entirely sure why that is. Probably something that might be worth looking into. But I mean, who knows if there's a reason? I don't know. I mean, I could see it having maybe something to do with just the lifestyle, for the people that did sail a lot, like honestly, they probably didn't have a lot of possessions if they spent most of the time on the ocean. And I don't know, there's something about tattoos that can be a reminder and can tell a story and, you know, all that stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was something like that. Let's just see if that would. Again, they're at like a kind of dockside tavern, and so I don't want them to have like really nice glasses or anything like that. Plus, I gotta remember, I do want them to have a bunch of rings. Yeah, so the cups that they're using are going to be very kind of earthen, sort of almost stoneware, you know, and especially once I start painting it, it'll have a lot of texture. It's not going to be all like perfect and fancy or anything like that. We're seeing too much of his hand coming from that angle. So we're gonna have to change that a little bit, which feels better. It's tricky sometimes when you are covering up more and more of the form, you know, to show the gesture, and I want him to have this kind of like languid sort of slouch, you know, not like standing perfectly upright at attention or anything like that. Thought it was feeling a little warm in here, but I don't know. Thermostat says it's not terribly warm. And I wasn't sure if I was gonna, like, I was very hesitant to redraw this because, you know, we had kind of drawn it already on the last stream. But I don't know, just knowing that it is something I want to turn into an oil painting, I kind of had to make sure that it was something I felt like painting. So, you know, sometimes there's that sort of a balance that we need to find as artists, right? Especially when we're working on our own stuff. It's hard enough to get any of this stuff done on our own time, you know, especially if, like me, if you work full time and you're drawing and painting full time for work. Yeah, it can be a bit much to then do this after work. I mean, I love doing this stuff no matter what, but you know, there is an aspect of having to bounce back and forth between work projects and personal projects and trying to switch your brain over at the drop of a hat. And so the more we can make this stuff fun, I think the easier it is to actually see something through to the end. And so that's where it's like, okay, I want to tell a story, but I also want this image to be fun to paint, you know, because that has to show through. If it's not fun to paint, then it'll show in the final, and then no one will really care. So sometimes it's worthwhile, I think, to rework something, to rethink an image, even if you spent a lot of time on it previously. At the end of the day, there isn't really a clock on this stuff, so who cares? Redo it until it's something you feel like working on. You know? That's how I feel anyway. And I don't dislike the other version. There's a lot that I like about it. But at the end of the day, it wasn't quite. I think this allows me to tell the story in the way that I want to tell it a little bit more. And I think will convey the attitude that I want in them a little more than the other one would. I think. I hope. And, you know, it's all decisions you want to come to, hopefully before you start painting. I figure even if these are kind of like cheaper sort of clay things, they would probably still, I don't know, maybe attempt to, make them feel fancier than they are. A little bit of carving or engraving. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they wouldn't care. Dockside tavern, chances are lots of brawls happen and lots of cups and dishes get broken. So maybe they wouldn't, but we're gonna say they do. Because why not? Accents in there. Again, I will use some of these accents, or at least reinforce them when I get into the painting process. Thought about doing this drawing traditionally first, because there's certain things that are just easier for me to think through, like with pencils, but oh well. Especially because once I do switch over to the PC, I'm not entirely sure how I will do a traditional stream, because right now it's super easy on the Mac. I can just plug my iPhone in and use that camera. I mean, I do have a setup where I could use the camera that's on me right now, which would capture it beautifully. And then I could just use a normal webcam, I guess, to kind of capture me. That'll probably work. I mean, it makes sense that I would use the better camera anyway to capture the art, It just, that setup is so clunky because I gotta get out the tripod and put this crazy boom arm on it, and it's kind of annoying and bulky, and it just takes up space, which is why I was like hoping to not do that, but oh well. We can make do. I think I want even the way the pants are made, I want that to have a certain kind of pattern in the pleats and stuff. All stuff to just kind of help create some kind of sense of culture, right, where we can. And fashion has always kind of been a big, and I don't mean fashion in the, snooty sense, although, I mean, it often goes there, right, as it, of course, gets nicer the richer people are, but I mean fashion in the very broad sense, from the lower class to the upper class, in whatever culture we're kind of playing with here, it's always been a pretty big kind of indicator. Cool. Let's move over to her for now. One of these days I should do this standing up, since my desk does raise and I have my iPad on a tripod easel, so I could easily raise this up, but not yet. Alright, so she will also be smiling. That is one thing we have to remember. Man, I'm gonna have to change the tip on this pencil soon, I think. Let's do it. I think I've got some. I don't know if it's open though. Here we are. Pencil tips. Pencil tips. Though I hate all the packaging, they sure do make them pretty convenient. Alright. So swap this out real quick. There. All right. See. I still want that kind of, what we think of as elven with the more like almond shaped eyes, right? all the fantasy that we've grown up with. So yeah, I think I'm gonna come back to her eyes. Let's get right there, kind of wicked amusement at the silly humans. I'm going to... It was easier with the facial hair to kind of not get distracted, but she doesn't have that. Nope. Man, one of the things I can't stand with the election stuff is just the amount of spam calls that you get. So annoying. I'm trying to think of what kind of smile I want her to have, and I'm not entirely sure. Let's try. Gotta kind of stretch the lips around the teeth a bit, right? Yeah. They both are. And originally I'd given them both some kind of a head wrap, but I don't want it to be like, oh, everyone in this culture wears that kind of a thing. Like, that's not actually what I want. So I want to get the sense that maybe there's a broader range, like maybe it's more like they're from a different continent, perhaps, or a larger country that has different provinces and even different cultures within those provinces, right? Which I feel like, if you're dealing with a more modern kind of a culture, whether it's set in modern day or sci-fi or whatever, it's a lot easier to then say, sort of in general, oh, everyone from here is this way, because with technology, and I mean we see it with the internet, the kind of homogenization of culture, right? Whereas I think before, when it was much harder to communicate even with people that were 30 miles away, because if you didn't have something that could get you there in an hour, a 30-mile trip, round trip, like it could have taken all day, potentially, or more than a day, depending on how much stuff you're taking, or whatever, or what kind of terrain you had to traverse. So I think it's easier to kind of say, with these more fantasy stories that are based, maybe more on whether it's medieval or Renaissance or something in between. You can deal with a much smaller area, smaller square mileage, and say that there are multiple cultures or beliefs or whatever, and nations can be much smaller as well, depending on how you want to play it. That was sort of the weird thing. Like, I loved The Wheel of Time. I've read those books a whole bunch. I'd gotten into them when I was young. And of course, I didn't know what I know now about world building and stuff, so I didn't think about it. But now when you read those books, like the numbers he throws out for the size of the armies and stuff, I'm like, how is that even, like, given the sort of time period that he was kind of basing things on, I'm just like, an army of 100,000 anything was completely unheard of, in the Middle Ages, or the Renaissance. So, like, some of that stuff was a little, and then just the distances that they kind of traveled was a little crazy. I wanted her ear cap to be different than his. Different but similar, So it kind of gives us variety in a sense that they could be from the same whatever, potentially same culture or something. And yeah, I think it's I think people got tired of the homogenization, of like, oh, all elves are this way, like every single one of them. And it's like, that's a little weird, because you can just, like, get more and more minute if you want, and just go into a single town, and not everybody is one way, outside of, like, complete, like communism. you know. And even within that, you still need some individuality and differences. And so I think as people have gotten kind of more and more versed in world building, you know, it's just become more like, it's come out more into the mainstream. It's not totally mainstream, but more and more people are aware of it, you know, thanks in large part to special features on movies, you know, where people, normal, like, non-artists started to see things about character design and world building and all that stuff that no one ever got to really see unless they happen to be interested in that kind of stuff. You know, you had to really seek it out before, whereas now, like, you can see it everywhere. Kids watch, you know, fucking Moana special features and making of and all that stuff. So I kind of want to give her, like, yeah, she's got the shawl around her neck, but let's you know, there's a lot that we can get away with as illustrators. Like, I could have kept the hair as it was and just put the scarf around her neck underneath her hair, and no one probably would have questioned it, with the exception of a few, like, super nitpicky souls. But realistically, like, that should be affecting the way that her hair falls, right? I mean, it should be flaring out over the shawl or tucked in, right? But it's not tucked in. We're not doing that. So let's do this right. But I also kind of want to give her some kind of beaded necklace thing underneath, which I'll get into more with the painting again. There's no point in completely drawing all that. Yeah, no, I think it's great that, you know, that stuff is becoming a bit more mainstream. At the same time, though, you know, there's an aspect that I don't like about it, in that now people want to explain everything in a scientific way, even with fantasy, you know, and I think there's a downside to that. I mean, I think it's cool if people want to get into, like, very specific magic systems and stuff, but it's gotten to the point right now where you almost have to, or else people think it's laziness or something, even if it's not. You, like, say you just want to leave some mystery for the viewer or for the reader, you know, like, I think that's okay. And I mean, it's interesting given something like Lord of the Rings that like started all of it, right? All the fantasy stuff. And yet he does not get into the magic system in any way. You know, like, I still don't exactly know how magic works in his world. It just does. But that's fine. Like, we don't really question it. Gandalf is a wizard. You know? And Saruman is a wizard. And I mean, it's interesting because, yes, there are times that he's throwing fireballs and that kind of stuff and calling down lightning. And then other times he's just like forcing his will on his opponent, you know? Which I think is really fascinating. Especially like if anyone has read Tolkien's essay called On Fairy Stories, where he basically kind of lays down what he believes are the criteria for fantasy, for the fantasy genre. What he talks about as being magic is really interesting and almost more conceptual, you know, like more abstract, I should say. And, you know, he talks about just as writers, something about like our ability to assign color, you know, to say that the sky is blue and the grass is green, like we already have a magician's powers with that, you know, and if you think about it, it's true, though I think he was talking more about like whoever first came up with that concept, you know, to look at the grass and say that's green, you know, before that was a thing, you know, and it's a pretty amazing way for the brain to work, you know, when we think about those early kind of forays into labeling things, you know, and thus creating them in a way that they don't have to be there, you know, for us to describe and envision them. Whereas if you think about, I mean, who knows if they invented chairs before they had a word for them. Maybe, you know? But then how do you describe a chair without a word for it, right? And so then someone ascribed a word, and now, like, you could describe this thing without the thing being there, and that's, I don't know, that stuff's fascinating to me. And so just kind of reading Tolkien's sort of descriptions on those things and maybe what he considered to be magic, you know, it wasn't always just like wizards calling down lightning. And I think that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Alright, so she's got, this is not armor, by the way. So, you know, no, please no, like, oh my god, it's impractical. This is literally decoration on her, because, you know, he's not wearing any armor. And originally I was like, no, the men and women dress the same, but if I did that, I would not be able to stream it. So I'm like, no, you know what? It's fine. They don't have to dress the same. Or at least maybe they don't when they're on land, right? Because they know that people freak out and all that. So this is literally it's decoration, Not armor. Not armor. And these things are really fun to paint too. Just because the subtle angle differences and things that sort of cause the light to hit them in different ways. I don't know, it's fun. Let's work out from a kind of larger one. And this would actually be kind of fun, now that I'm thinking about it, to make these like actual coins from like different cultures or something, like different places that she's been. I think that could be kind of cool. Like more of a personal thing rather than any kind of a cultural thing. It is kind of big brain energy. Like sometimes, like reading some of that stuff, and you start to hit on some of these concepts, and you're just like, your brain just barely is kind of getting it. Like on a certain level, you understand it internally, but you can't quite wrap your head around it enough to voice it sometimes. And I don't know. It's kind of cool. Fun to push ourselves, right? So for anyone that's interested, I'm pretty sure you can Google Tolkien on fairy stories, and I think there's a PDF floating around of it, and it's pretty fascinating. And I haven't read it in a while, so I don't know like if some of it might feel a little outdated or not, but I don't really think so. I feel like he laid those kind of guidelines down pretty well, and not in such a strict way that it has anything to do with when he laid them down, you know, because it is more about concepts. Where these shapes gotta go, you know, because at the end of the day, it is also still a not so clever censoring tactic. Because Twitch just can't bother to amend their guidelines around doing art. So we are not allowed to do any kind of nudity, even totally non-sexual. It's just kind of ridiculous, you know? And I feel like with more and more artists on Twitch, they really should get around to amending some of the guidelines. figure out what kind of jewelry. I think I just want this to be like a metal band. You know, that would be open in the center, like in this case in the underarm there. And on this hand, she's like playing, you know, with her ring. She's like using her thumb, kind of playing with the ring on her forefinger. So but she also has a thumb ring. Right. There we go. So funny, it feels good in the sketch, but not quite when so let's get this working. There's an aspect of hands that I find sometimes easier to paint than to just draw. I mean, I don't know if it's easier per se, but like you can kind of depict, because there's so many little forms in the hands, right? That once you get past a certain level of simplicity with them, then you start having to like really detail them out. And that's where they can get a little tricky, I think, when we're just drawing them. It can be sometimes a little easier when we're painting. Just because with drawing, we're dealing with all these lines. And so we just have to keep in mind that we are going to be painting the hands. and some of those lines will disappear, right? Because you start getting a ton of lines in the hands, and the hands start to look very old, which we don't always want. So just have to kind of keep in mind that, all right, well, it's cool. We will be painting them, so we can age them down that way. That works. Good enough. Hey, Bass Hunger, or Bash Unger, or Bashangar. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. I'm glad my struggling through hands is not boring you too much. Gotta struggle sometimes, though, you know? Otherwise, what's the point? One of the ways I can make these cups, you know, feel not as nice is they can be kind of, you know, they don't have to be exactly the same. They don't even have to be exactly the same size. You know, we can... And once I get into the painting, we can always like give them some chips and things like that. Make them feel a little less nice, you know, even more. Yeah, I'm glad. Um, I was really hoping to be able to, stream 3 days a week, but right now, um, I think I'm gonna have to keep it to 2 days a week, Mondays and Thursdays, um, 7 o'clock, 7 p.m. Pacific time till whenever. Usually I end up going till about 10. I feel like 3 hours kind of gives me enough time to, really dig into something. In some cases, it's enough time to finish stuff. In other cases, it's just enough time to kind of get through a certain phase of a image. In this case, I think we'll be able to at least get into a little bit of painting. No idea how much, but we'll be able to get into some, so that'll be fun. And I'll probably still do some other streams here and there. It just kind of depends on what I'm working on and what phase of a project I'm in. Because a lot of these are intended to be written. They're not any kind of like ultimately a visual thing. And so you get to a certain point where you just gotta get some writing done, and that wouldn't be very interesting to stream, I don't think. So, and that's where I was finding myself with like not quite enough time to get any writing done because I was focused more on streaming stuff. And I'm like, but if that's not the intention for the project, then that's kind of not what needs to happen. But I love streaming. I think it's tons of fun. I love sharing art processes. Makes me happy. I am not. Actually, I work full time. I mostly work on movie posters and TV posters and video game covers and stuff. So most of the time it's just sketching concepts for them. Occasionally if they need illustration, then sometimes, I get to illustrate on them as well. But most of my work is as a sketch artist. I run the illustration department at an ad agency in Hollywood. So, sketching and illustrating is what we do. So yeah, I do that full time. Otherwise, I would be streaming a whole lot more if I was freelance. In fact, I would probably make streaming a daily thing if I was freelance, at least for, portions of the day. Obviously, there's plenty of freelance work that you can't show. And, I can hardly even show my stuff even when it's out in the world. And, I mean, to be fair, it's not just my stuff, working full-time at an agency, it's such a team effort that, it's like oftentimes I'm just there at the very end of the process. I'm not doing everything start to finish. Sometimes I am, but most of the time it's a team thing, group effort. Art directors come up with an awesome concept, client wants to see it illustrated, so then I illustrate it. know. I used to be freelance though, and there's a lot of that stuff that I miss, though right now, not so much. I'm very, very happy to have a full-time gig in this crazy pandemic world. So Richard Witters. I actually don't know who Richard Witters is, to be honest. But I'll have to look him up. And yeah, I'm assuming you're asking in terms of like mentioning another artist or something. I'm totally cool with that. Like, I have no issues with talking about other artists that are doing good work. I know some people get very competitive and don't want any of that kind of stuff, but I honestly I get competitive, but in a very different way. Not in the sense of like, you know, coveting my own information and not wanting to share and all that stuff. Like, I love doing all that. Thank you for the follow, the Sonnet Silence, and Hazard Design. Thank you. Oh, did I miss a raid? There's a raid! Raid! I totally missed that. Thinking forwardly. Thinking forwardly. Thank you for the raid. I don't know why my raid alert didn't go off. What the hell? Hey, any raid is welcome, mini raid or not. Thinking forwardly, how was your stream? What kind of stuff do you do? No, but I still should have gotten an alert for the raid. And it didn't go off. And that bums me out. I want my alerts to work. Ooh, that's cool. I like that combination. Do you have anything you want to show? Are you working on anything? Please feel free to, plug anything you were working on. I like doodles. I like bonsais. Alright, trying to get that sort of pleat happening. Oh, that's cool. We do love rough doodles here, though. At least I do. It's actually some of my favorite stuff to do, is just really rough. I don't know. A lot of times I'll do roughs and think, like, okay, I'm going to finish this, afterward. And I do the rough. I'm like, I kind of love it the way it is. I don't feel the need to finish it. That's where, I sometimes have to be a little careful about, if I actually want to develop something to finish out, I have to, have all the information there, but I don't want it to be too cool, because otherwise I'll just be like, nah, it's done. which is a little more of a saber kind of deal. I am. Oh yeah, we have. Which emotes? Did they approve both the? Yeah, we got both the emotes. There you go. Cool. Cool. Oh, cool. Got a nice, graphic design motif and stuff going on. Right on. Sweet. Ooh, and I like those bonsais. Those are rad. Very cool. And to answer your question, I'm basically doing this as a study to do an oil painting from. So, because, a lot of times I'll start to get very, very specific in terms of the scene that I want, and there's just no way that I'm really going to get reference for it. But I know that I have the skills to essentially paint my own reference, even if it sometimes seems a little backwards, because it might take me just as long to paint the reference as it does to paint the actual painting. Usually not. Usually the reference goes quicker because it's digital, and oil paints are just, slower. No way around that. But the digital aspect is a great chance to kind of mess around with color palette and value structure and all that stuff. So you can't really do that as much in the oils because you'll overpaint it and things will get muddy, and then you can't work the paint anymore, and you gotta do everything all over again. It's a giant pain in the ass. So that's where the digital stuff comes in handy a lot. Just being able to kind of do this stuff, mess around, never worry about overworking it. You got your layers, you can delete them as you like, all that stuff. And I've done studies. Let's see here. So I've done some painting studies of other things. Like this was done. Let's see if I have BRB. Yeah, so I had done her as a study for this girl. Right? So a little oil painting that I'd done. Yeah. So that's where the digital stuff, I think, kind of really can come in handy. I still need to finish the painting of him, which I have back there. Ooh, an app for watercolor. That's a really tricky one. I will say that I think it's Max Ulichny that did a great watercolor set, right? Was that Max? Yeah, the watercolor Max pack. So Max Ulichny did a great watercolor set for Procreate. His brushes are awesome. They definitely take some getting used to, but they do a pretty damn good job of emulating emulating watercolors, depending on how you use them, you know, because he actually created like watercolors, scanned them in really high res, you know, and spent a long time kind of finessing the way that these brushes work. And you know, I gotta say, like, he did a great job. They're the best digital watercolors that I've seen. You know, and he's got a ton of brushes. Now, granted, I love using watercolors. Let's see. Oh boy, I don't know if I can spell his last name. Max Ulichny. If you Google a watercolor Max pack, it should come up on Gumroad. Right, if you can see right here, watercolor Max pack. Also, his gouache Max pack is awesome. Like, he makes fantastic brush sets. So I would recommend his brush sets very, very highly. But yeah, unfortunately, I do not remember how to spell his last name. But he makes good shit. Oops, not that one. That one. Alright. Cool. I think we got everything on there. So we are going to change this to multiply. We're going to kick the opacity down a little bit because I don't really like to have it on 100% opacity. We'll kick the opacity down on this stuff and let's start painting. Two things though. Well, one thing, because I do want to keep the lines for later use. I'm just gonna keep that layer down there. Oh, let's see. We want some linen. Linen. Where's my linen? There's my linen. All right. Sweet. Awesome. Yeah, he makes awesome brushes. So when I do oils, I do tend to work over the top of a warm ground. So I tend to like to mimic that a bit when I paint. That might be a little dark. Let's go a little bit lighter. Weird. This brush is working strange. Let's do... I feel like it should be larger. Sorry, I had made a few different brushes of these, and I don't think this one has the linen on it, though. Does it? It doesn't. But maybe that's okay. We can bring the linen in with the color. I mean, obviously this is color, but I feel feel like the grain is too small. Or my canvas is maybe a little bigger than it should be, but whatever. Whatever. So I like it to have a bit of an organic feel. I'm not totally covering all the white just yet, because I'm gonna put a few kind of colors on this, or maybe I'll just switch to my brush that has some color dynamics. You know, it is digital after all. We might as well take advantage of some of the shortcuts, right? Where's my color? Color. Alright, we're gonna fuck with these settings a little bit. Opacity, dynamics. Hue, set, lightness. I don't know if I want. Too much. Oh, one. That's why. That scale's so tiny. We'll see if that works. So I want some color dynamics, but in this case I don't want like a ton of color dynamics, you know? But we'll play around a little bit with some color. Whoa. Way too light. So in this phase, I'm actually going to focus a little more on getting the value structure in. I don't know if we'll get to the like real color. First, I just kind of want some texture. That's like, I just want a nice organic texture to work over first. It's kind of my main thing that I'm looking at. I have a combination of brushes. Some of these brushes I made in Procreate, some I made in Photoshop and then brought over to Procreate and had to kind of mess with a bit. I feel like the ones that are made in Procreate work the best though. I personally think the 11 would feel small. I think the 12.9 inch is just, it's a good size. It's basically the size of an A4 sketchbook, you know? And so for me, like that's the size moleskin that I use for sketching. So it just feels very comfortable for me. I had tried a smaller one, though I think it was before they introduced the 11. So it was like the 9 or something, the 9 inch, whatever. And I thought maybe, oh, it'll be great, it's small, convenient, I can make it work. And I think after about 3 days, I was like, nope, I took it back. It's like, I need the 12.9. I think the smaller ones are maybe just a little too small, personally. I want to get some kind of shadows in here, and this is just going to basically be to start figuring out the value grouping. So first things first, I'm going to keep in mind I want light coming out of that window. So, and I want the outside here to be nighttime, I think. You know, we'll have a little bit of light bleed because there's probably lanterns and, you know, things like that. I don't know that they had like any kind of street lamps, street lanterns, or not. But you would get lanterns hanging up above doors and things like that. So let's just kind of get some of that value going on. And like I said before, I do want this to be vignetted. So I'm actually gonna paint, I mean, back in the day when they did the vignetted paintings, it was really meant to work around text, right? So they'd place the text in the empty areas. I'm not necessarily doing that, but I love the look of it, so I'm gonna mimic it anyway. So again, I use flat brushes when I do oils most of the time. And so that's kind of what this brush is meant to replicate, you know. What's up, John? How you doing, brother? I know I saw that ad yesterday. Not on the one that's on Twitch, but whichever one was playing during the football games. It cracked me up. Oh, Borat. I'm okay with a Borat ad in front of my stream. I can dig it. The other fun thing with making the outside scene a nighttime scene is that I can really play with warms and cools that way, right? Because knowing that the interior would all be lit by candles and lanterns and stuff, so it's all going to be, you know, torches on sconces and that kind of shit. It's all going to be very warm lighting, and then outside I can play with, you know, maybe it's a full moon or something like that, so we can really get some nice like cools going on, which I think will be a lot of fun. Mr. Jay-Z, how you doing, man? Everyone, if you don't know Mr. John Zylstra, you should. I know he won't post his Instagram if I ask him, but he should. Or if anyone else has his Instagram handy, y'all should link it. Yeah. Yeah. Now, let's see. I'm going to... Let's see. I'm just debating how bright I actually want it to be inside, you know. I think I need to kind of play with a range, so best to start a little less bright and work up. Mostly because, you know, it's not electricity, so there's all kinds of fall off that happens when you're dealing with any sort of like flame-based lighting, right? Yeah, I know he had started that on his last stream. I'll definitely have to check out how it's going. I liked where it was heading, and I know that he ended up doing a bit of tweaking on it after the stream, or on a different day, I think. You know, it's tricky because sometimes, like, on the when you're working on stream, sometimes you start rushing things a little bit more than you should, and so we do often find ourselves having to like kind of backtrack and Alright, so they've got some see. So then the other thing I gotta keep in mind is, how do I want to depict this, right? Do I want to give it a kind of camera vibe, you know, which we're all so used to seeing, or do I want to have it more of like a realist sort of, you know, as though I was there painting, where my eyes would adjust, right? If I was looking into the lights back there, my eyes would adjust accordingly. Or if we want to have a camera vibe, would I blow it out a bit more, you know, than what it really would be? Which, you know, I don't hate that idea just because of the silhouette potential. You know, I think that could be kind of rad, right? Get to chisel out that silhouette. I think that could be pretty damn cool. We blow it out just a little bit more. I just don't want it to feel like it's electricity lighting it, you know? Don't want that stuff. And I'll probably like allude to some figures in there and stuff too. But for now, let's take this and oops, not that. That's what I wanted. I want a dark. Whoa, not that much. Just a little. so tempted. I actually want to heat up the saturation, even though what's going to get painted on top is actually going to be much cooler. But I like to have that heat kind of show through. So, yeah. 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 Thank you, and thanks for the follow. I appreciate it. I'll be back Thursday night as well. I know you'll probably be in the same situation, but 7 p.m. Pacific time Thursday. We'll be continuing on this, so hopefully you can pop in and kind of see where it's gone. It would be awesome. On her face. That's her face. Which I want to chisel out, but kind of in a different way as well. Obviously not as high contrast, but you know, she'll have some light moonlight on her. Careful, you might get a saber for your troubles. Let's see here. Trying to think of what I want my next step to be. Let's get some. I'm trying to decide if I want. Yeah, we'll get some shadows in on them. I was debating if I wanted to do the shadows on this layer or just get into the actual color, but I think it'll help with the value grouping if I can kind of do at least some of that now. So. So let's think about the moonlight and where I want that. And I think like fairly top down, maybe like upper right a little bit. So I'm not really gonna zoom in too much on this phase because this is more about keeping the kind of broader design in mind. I know I could use the little reference deal that Procreate introduced, but it's not quite the same. Because you zoom in and inevitably you're going to start worrying about details before you should. So, you know, best not to push it too much yet. It'll be fun because we'll get, you know, a little bit of light bleed, slight rim light happening from the interior lighting that's popping through. That's what I'm afraid of. Whoops. Yeah, so that'll be, I think, really fun stuff to play with. That we'll get to it tonight, but you know, we'll get there. Feel like I should get into a little bit of local value as well. Of course, that adds a whole other things. So let's do some local value, just because some of this stuff is gonna, you know, be darker, some lighter. Haven't entirely decided on which. I think those will be darker. The one around her waist might be a little bit lighter. I don't know if it'll be lighter than her skin or not, but maybe. Because they do have kind of darker skin. So I can go a little bit lighter with it without getting too crazy if I want, right? Without it being like white, you know, feeling like white. Doesn't take much. And I love working in like a nocturne palette, by the way. I think it's super fun to kind of to work with just that limited, you know, like range of color. You know, it's all kind of just shades of cool, and you just get to kind of push it around a little bit and nudge things, play with not just temperature but also saturation, right? Because once you get into those really cool palettes, all you have to do is desaturate a blue and it'll warm it up, but sometimes you actually need to warm up the color. So I don't know, it's a fun, to me it's always been a kind of a fun challenge to work with. I've always really enjoyed it. I mean, and you look at some of the nocturne paintings that the old illustrators did, whether it was Frederick Remington or Harvey Dunn, what's his name? McGinnis, right? Robert McGinnis. Those guys did some really cool nocturne paintings. And man, they would push it, right? I mean, they would just, Remington loved doing like green night scenes. You know. but it's cool to see that stuff from guys that really like observed it. Yeah. Yeah. Though I don't think we're gonna go complementary. I'm more using this from the standpoint of like if like when I do the oil painting, I'm gonna basically lay down a warm ground. You know, I always do that. I usually use the Williamsburg Italian Terra Rosa is kind of my favorite one. It's similar to burnt sienna, but not quite the same. It's not as hot as burnt sienna and not as like intense, but a very, very similar color. So basically I'm just wanting to kind of mimic the process a bit, knowing that this is going to be an oil painting. I don't want to approach it in a way that is purely digital, you know? So that's kind of why I'm doing the underpainting, knowing that I will have some of the underpainting showing through in the actual painting, because I always do. I don't like to totally cover up the underpainting. I'm probably going to go with the, as far as the actual color on them, I'm probably going to go a lot more towards the blues and violets than I would toward like the Remington greens. I'll go more Harvey Dunn on it. Dean Cornwell. I love Remington's paintings, but I tend to sit more in the Brandywine camp as far as what really like inspires me. This is all just kind of laying down rough values to work on top of. I'll probably bring in one more dark into this just for the accents, because, you know, otherwise it'll all kind of start to bleed together. And we do want some separation. But also, like, as I bring in darker values, it starts to really kind of set up our lighting scenario a bit more. Knowing that, so my idea is that there's this kind of outside bar that's extending out a bit, so that's got to cast a shadow. They need to, you know, because you get those like full moon nights and you will cast a shadow. Hell, there are times Venus is bright enough to cast shadows, so always nice to get a little bit of variety in the stonework too. You don't want all the stones being exactly the same. They can be pretty close, like you don't need a ton of variety unless you want to. Nothing wrong with that either. But we should be. Hello, Mauricio. Welcome. How you doing? Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Let's grab some yellow here. Something just to catch the kind of top of that bar just a little bit. I'm not going to get into the rim lights and stuff right now because honestly, like those should be left till much later. In fact, they can be added on at the very end with kind of final highlights and stuff. So what I do want is some deeper darks for accents. And maybe even, I don't know if I want to go too crazy on the hair, even though they have black hair, so, or blackish. I actually haven't decided. Dark hair, for sure. I think they might have really dark brown, maybe, but I might go for that like super black, like blue-black hair. Not opposed to it. Mauricio, how are you doing? How's your Monday? My Monday started out kind of rough, and I really don't know why. No particular reason. It was just, I was very groggy this morning. And my coffee did not help. Accents starting to do their job, right? Right on. Well, I'm glad you're back. And you may not have missed too many because there were a bunch of streams that I just wasn't able to get to. Between just work getting a little crazy and had to pull some long days and stuff. So, you may not have missed too many streams. But, overall I've been good. Cannot complain. We have been kind of getting busier at work, and I just hope that continues because, that'll mean kind of an upswing in the industry. It's hard to say though, sometimes it's just like a temporary thing, but I know that people are really trying to get productions back up and running, but a lot of stuff for us also depends on theaters because we do a lot of print for theatrical, posters and stuff like that, and if theaters can't open, there's a lot less need for posters. Sort of, they still need them to release online right now too, so there's that, but still. In this case, no. I intentionally was going for, faces that are a bit more Middle Eastern looking. I wanted that kind of visual sort of cultural inspiration for these. for these characters. So in this case, you know, my girlfriend's face is definitely a different shape. Her nose is a completely different shape. She would kill me if I drew her with eyebrows like that. Even though I love those like dark, heavy eyebrows, but she doesn't. But that's okay. I'm debating how far I want to go with some of these values. I think I want to go a little bit more with them though. Just enough to differentiate some of the materials, you know, especially the metallics and stuff. I definitely want to push them a bit more. And his these sort of metal bands on their arms will have like engravings and stuff on them, but I don't really feel the need to get into that just yet. I don't think my nose is as angular as his nose. And I'm pretty sure he has a much better hairline than I do. Beads in his beard. But it is true, much of the time I end up just drawing my girlfriend. Unless I'm consciously trying to design, you know, a character, then I don't. But if I'm just kind of like letting some of that stuff go on autopilot, then yeah, they pretty much just end up looking like her. Let's get some darks on that one. And this will also have engravings and stuff, but neglect the rings. The ring. Though within the same story, you know, she would be much more like my girlfriend with the rounder face. And the red hair and the green eyes are a pretty dead giveaway. But she's in the same world, so, you know, there is that. And one of these days I'll finish up this one as well. It's getting there. It's almost there, but it's not done yet. It's not done yet. And then she's a different race of elf. So this particular race of elves is much taller, right? She's like 7 feet tall. Have a bit more bit more Indian rather than Middle Eastern, East Indian, you know? So I want them to feel kind of related but different. So again, in the same world, eventually. Oh yes. Oh, Lily Collins. I don't know how Phil Collins managed to make that, but he did a good job. Because she is gorgeous. Right, usually when you see someone like that, it's like one of their parents at least is like really good looking. And, you know, Phil Collins isn't a bad looking guy. He's just kind of tiny. But, like, she's like way better looking than both her parents. So I don't know how the hell that happened. But that's fine. I don't want to go super bright because they are outside, but I do want some of these to be catching a little more light, and some of them will be maybe a little darker. We'll see. I'll play around with that more when I do the actual painting. It's a super cute show too, by the way. Emily in Paris. Right. Subtle, subtle is the name of the game. You're doing these nocturnes. Right? They have their own kind of contrast. So by the end, I imagine the darks will get much heavier. Because we gotta kind of keep in mind that we can't get too bright with the lights if we want our main light source on the outside here to essentially be moonlight, and we can't go too crazy with that. So we have to be able to kind of bracket that in the right way. So one of the ways we do that is by getting heavier with the darks so that we don't have to go as bright with the lights, right, to make them feel light. It'll also be fun to get into their tattoos. I have yet to come up with a kind of motif, I guess you could say, for what their tattoos might look like. I mean, I'd kind of, sort of come up with one a while back. I just don't know if I'll stick with it or not. Maybe. And I am also gonna need to figure out like exactly what these beads are about. If it's the type of beads, or is it like, you know, the color, or do they have some particular like marking on them? Like, what is it that depicts their station? Let's get these rings. Bling out these rings a little bit, huh? Yeah. So, we'll see. Separation here. So maybe not quite that much. It's a little better. Kind of like her hair sort of bleeding into that shadow, you know? I think that lost edge will be pretty fun. My guess is we'll actually end up with quite a few lost edges, especially down here in the deep shadows, you know? But I think that'll, I don't know, that'll create some really fun shape play. Plus we can, I don't know, maybe get into a little bit of simultaneous contrast there, where we get into, you know, things that have the same values, but we'll just separate them with some nice color pops, potentially, but obviously limited light scenario, so, you know. But as illustrators, of course, we can cheat some of that stuff. We can kind of play around and not stick 100% to the laws of lighting physics, right? Because at the end of the day, it's about creating the image that we want with the mood and intention that we want. So I think whatever allows us to get there. Plants and stuff, so no, I have the PC actually. I don't have it all like completely set up. I've got a lot of stuff to transfer over, so I'm not streaming on it just yet, but I do have it, and it is mostly set up. I have a temporary graphics card in there right now. I have the RTX 2070 arriving tomorrow, I think. Just because I have no idea when the 30s are going to be available again, you know, and I'm not really going to wait on that. I'll get one eventually, but the 2070 will be just fine for now, for what I need to do. Eventually I do want the 3090, just because that will stay relevant for, you know, a good while, and I prefer that. I don't like to have to upgrade super often, so I'd rather get something that will last for a long time. So we'll get there eventually. But hopefully next week I'll start streaming on the PC. The only problem is, you know, streaming with the iPad and stuff is a lot trickier. Like, it's not as good for like, the PC isn't as good for streaming with the iPad. You know, I can use a power mirror, but it's not as good as being able to just plug my iPad into my Mac and have it show up on OBS as a source. You know, like, that's just awesome. But upside is, at least I'll be able to, like, stream Photoshop without using up all my CPU power and stuff too. So, you know, I'll be able to do some other things that I can't currently do. You know, I can't work on a large canvas in Photoshop right now and stream it with my current shitty iMac. So it'll be nice to kind of be able to do some other things, I think. But I think we are actually going to call it here in just a couple minutes, only because I'm getting to the point where I would dive into color, and I feel like that'll be better left for Thursday, because I would only be able to do a little bit, because, you know, I gotta get to bed at a reasonable hour. I have a lot of work to do tomorrow, so I would rather keep that. One thing I might do, I feel like it might be worth considering earlier rather than later, is how I want to, because I was mentioning that I want to treat this as a vignette, you know, similar to the old vignettes that some of those old illustrators would create, where they would just have either raw linen or they would just paint essentially like a kind of off-white color. And the fun part of that is that it really, like, it gives a very different impression of the values when you just kind of have this almost a frame in a way. And so I'll probably have to play with it a little bit along the way to kind of figure out the shape that I want it to take, keeping in mind that this value has nothing to do with the scene that I'm painting, right? So this has no bearing on the lighting scenario, except that it will, all of a sudden, the lights start to feel, you know, very limited now, like a limited palette kind of scenario, right? So we'll see. It's kind of a fun thing where to play with some graphic shapes with. So And this is just to give me some kind of an idea to start to riff off of. And it's not by any means final, but it gives me an idea of where it could go. Juno. The other thing that this does when you're doing an actual painting, depending on the impression that you want, right? If you want to do a looser painting, let's say, because I don't know how tight I'm gonna want to go on this, on the actual oil painting. One of the things that helps is don't finish it out to the edges. Keep your edges loose. The edge of the actual image, keep them loose, and then visually, like, people will be much more forgiving of how finished it is on the interior. At the same time, you can go super tight on the interior if you want, and then just loosen up as you get out toward the edges. A little bit of line decker, like he would do. There you go, Mauricio. That's exactly what I was thinking, was more Dean Cornwell. Like, he is just a huge inspiration to me. And I loved the vignette paintings that he would do. All those guys, all those Brandywine guys, right? Like, so cool. So that's what I'm thinking. And especially once I get the kind of limited lights in here, I think it'll be really fun. So I hope, if I don't, fuck it up along the way, which is always a possibility. You never know. Okay. I am going to call it a night. Hopefully I'll get a decent night's sleep. But we'll be back at it on Thursday. I might do some work on it between now and then, but if I do, we'll go over it and replay it on Thursday, so we can all catch up and see where it's at. So until then, y'all, I hope you guys and gals and everyone in between have great nights. And we'll see y'all on Thursday, okay? Thank you, everyone, for stopping by. Thanks for watching and hanging out, asking questions, chatting. I love it. Do more of that, please. And we'll see you in a couple days. All right?